Identify these common logical fallacies to win any debate without raising your voice. Common logical fallacies are flaws in reasoning that make weak arguments sound stronger than they are. If you can identify a straw man, personal attack, false choice, distraction, or emotional pressure while it is happening, you can respond with calm questions instead of raising your voice. A debate often becomes loud when the reasoning becomes thin. Someone may interrupt, speak faster, twist your words, or make the room feel urgent. From the outside, that can look like confidence. Underneath, the argument may have quietly broken. The quiet question that helps in almost any debate is this: does the conclusion actually follow from the evidence? Why bad arguments often sound convincing. Bad arguments work because people do not listen with logic alone. We also listen with memory, pride, fear, social pressure, and emotion. Before we carefully examine evidence, our brain is already asking whether the speaker sounds confident, whether other people agree, whether we are being attacked, and whether disagreeing will make us look difficult. That is why a weak argument can still feel powerful. Confidence can disguise confusion. Popularity can disguise missing evidence. Emotion can disguise a weak connection between claim and proof. A calm speaker does not chase every spark. They listen for structure. If you want to improve this skill, practice slowing your answer before you speak. It is closely related to responding when a question makes you feel defensive, because both skills ask you to pause before emotion takes control. The most common logical fallacies in debate. You do not need to memorize every fallacy name before you can debate better. Start with the patterns that appear most often in real conversations: changing the claim, attacking the person, pretending there are only two options, distracting from the issue, or replacing evidence with pressure. Straw man. Situation. You say a team should reduce unnecessary meetings. Less effective. So you think meetings should be banned completely? Better. That is not quite what I said. My point is that we should remove meetings that do not need a live discussion. Why this works? It refuses the exaggerated version of your argument. It brings the room back to your real claim. It stays calm without accepting the false framing. Ad hominem. Situation. You question a proposal and the other person attacks your experience instead of your evidence. Less effective. You do not understand business, so this is not worth discussing. Better. Let's focus on the point itself. Which part of the evidence do you disagree with? Why this works? It separates your character from the argument. It asks for a real objection. It avoids turning the debate into a personal fight. False dilemma. Situation. Someone presents only two extreme choices. Less effective. You either support this plan completely or you don't care about progress. Better. There may be more than two options here. I support the goal, but I want to discuss the method. Why this works? It opens up the missing middle ground. It shows disagreement with a plan is not rejection of the goal. It reduces pressure without sounding evasive. How to spot a red herring without losing the thread. A red herring is an irrelevant point introduced to distract from the matter being discussed. You might be talking about customer complaints, and someone replies, "But our marketing campaign performed really well last month." That may be true, but it does not answer the original issue. The calm response is not to dismiss the new point rudely. You can say, "That may be worth discussing, but let's finish the original question first." This keeps the conversation from becoming a maze and helps everyone remember what is actually being decided. When emotion replaces evidence. Emotion belongs in human conversation. The problem begins when emotion becomes a substitute for proof. Statements such as, "If you cared, you would agree with me," or "Only a heartless person would question this," pressure the listener instead of proving the point. A better response is, "I understand the emotion involved. Let's also look at whether the evidence supports the conclusion." This does not dismiss feeling. It simply prevents feeling from becoming the whole argument. If the other person becomes intense or demanding, learning how to deal with demanding people without losing self-control can help you keep your response steady. Use questions instead of accusation. Naming a fallacy can be useful in a classroom, but it can sound like point scoring in a tense conversation. If you say, "That is a straw man," the other person may feel corrected in public and become more defensive. If your goal is clarity, a question is usually stronger. Ask, "What exactly is the claim?" Ask, "What evidence supports that conclusion?" Ask, "Does the evidence prove the point or only suggest it?" Ask, "Are we discussing the original issue or a distraction?" These questions reveal the weak point without turning the conversation into a contest of labels. They also make your tone sound more curious than combative. A simple framework for calm debate. When the room gets tense, use a 5-step structure. First, clarify the claim. Second, ask for evidence. Third, check whether the evidence actually supports the conclusion. Fourth, notice whether the argument has shifted into insults, fear, popularity, or irrelevant detail. Fifth, respond with a question that brings the conversation back to the point. This works in meetings, family disagreements, online debates, interviews, and difficult conversations with friends. You do not need to sound superior. You need to sound steady. A calm debate depends on keeping the main point visible. How Spekero can help you practice clear responses. Knowing the logic is only half the skill. The other half is delivery. You may know exactly why an argument is flawed, but if your answer sounds rushed, nervous, or aggressive, your point can lose strength. In real conversations, people judge your pace, tone, clarity, and confidence, as well as your reasoning. Use Spekero to record yourself answering difficult claims. Practice saying, "What evidence supports that conclusion?" Or, "There may be more than 2 options here." Listen back for speed, filler words, harshness, and whether your question sounds calm enough to keep the room open. Related articles include how to answer questions without rambling, what it really means to have good self-control, and how to be blunt without being rude. The next time someone raises their voice, twists your words, attacks your character, or rushes you into a false choice, pause. Listen for the structure of the argument. Ask the question that brings the debate back to evidence. You do not need to become louder when your thinking becomes sharper. Practice with Spekero. Record a 1-minute response to a difficult argument. Try one version that reacts quickly, then one version that pauses and asks for evidence. Listen back for pace, tone, filler words, and whether your final version sounds calm enough to be heard.